Hey, AP US government students. I am making this review video for y'all so that I can help you guys out with the Unit 1 test. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, I know some of y'all asked me to wear the hat, but I already made one video once for 20 minutes and the microphone didn't turn on, so I had to remake that video for AP US history. So I just got done with that, and now I'm making y'all's video, so y'all just gonna have to deal with this. And how fitting that, that's right there. So let's go ahead and get started so that we can make this as short for y'all and to the point. Now remember, I'm going to help you push out the door with information. It is up to you to check your notes, to check the PowerPoints, and look up other sources to be able to help you guys out. I'm here to help you guys out. So here we go. Where is the process of amending the Constitution found in the U.S. Constitution? Explain the formal process of amending the Constitution. Is this process easy or difficult? Why? Okay, so first and foremost, where do we find amending the U.S. Constitution? It is in Article 5. Article 5 is where we get in the Constitution how to amend the Constitution. And there are two ways of doing, well, we only need one way for this question, and that is the formal. So first and foremost, there can be a 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate in Congress. So that means that we get a supermajority, that a proposal is given to the Congress and then is given to the states. And so then we get the ratification process, which means make it into law. Through this route, it goes to a special ratifying convention with 3/4 of the state legislators. And so it starts in Congress, ends with the states. That's the first one. And that one we have used every time except for one time. And so the other one is that a national constitutional convention is called upon by either by Congress at the request of the states, meaning Congress doesn't start it. Okay, let's say Congress doesn't want this amendment, so they don't do it, but the states do. You have to get 2/3 of the states to come together and say, we want this amendment. So 2/3 of the state have to come together to propose this amendment. When it gets through, it then goes through the ratification process, which means that 3/4 of the state legislators have to do it. So it starts with the states, ends with the states. So that is the two formal ways of doing it. And it is through Article 5 that is described how to be able to do this. So would we say this is easy or difficult? I think you guys have already guessed it by now. It is extraordinarily difficult. We've only done it 28 times. And so the Constitution is extremely difficult to be able to amend. So why did we do that? We do not want to amend the Constitution willy-nilly. We do not want one party being able to do it. We do not want one political movement to be able to do this. It forces the major parties, now today 2 major parties, to have to work together to get an amendment passed through. That's the reason why. All right, what are the primary differences between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists? What were the compromises that solved those differences? So the biggest thing that was the difference between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists was the power and scope of the central government. How much power does the government have? How big should the government be? That is the big thing. The Federalists wanted an expansion of central authority. The Anti-Federalists really wanted to make sure that there were protections against that central authority. So what was our main compromises? The main one was the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, the protection of individual liberties. And so that is the big thing, is what protects us from a larger tyrannical government. So the main compromise that y'all need to know is the first 10 amendments. Y'all can look at the other compromises addressing different things with the Constitution, but that's the one that for sure y'all need to know. Identify the failures of the Articles of Confederation. What event would make the founders change the Articles of Confederation? All right. So the major failures of the articles was one, no real executive branch. So there wasn't any real executive power. There was no real judicial branch. So there was no way to settle in the courts the differences between the states. And the legislator was extremely weak. The legislator was unable to amend the articles to address these issues because they needed 100% of all 13 states in order to make this happen. All 13 states got one vote. The little states were equal to the big states. That was a big problem, that there was a failure of proper representation. The big states felt like they were getting shortchanged, and if you were a little state, you loved it. So, what eventually leads to the changes of the Articles of Confederation? Shays' Rebellion. Shays' Rebellion highlighted the weakness of having no standing army, because there wasn't one, to be able to put down a rebellion. Another major failure of the articles was unable to raise revenue. No effective power to tax. They were unable to raise revenue. So that led to huge failures, including Shays' Rebellion. They could not pay the pensions of these ex-Revolutionary War veterans. All right. Under the Articles of Confederation, who held the powers between the states and the federal government? What advantages did it offer to the people, to their states? All right, the states. The states were the big honchos in this one. The states were the bosses of the Articles of Confederation, that they held more power than the federal government. So what advantages did this offer to the people of those states? Individual liberties were guaranteed, essentially. That there was a huge safeguard against tyrannical government. That you knew that the federal authorities, the central government, not federal because that didn't really exist, that you had protection of your individual liberties. You had the say to how to run your state however you wanted to. And so that was one major advantage of the Articles of Confederation. All right. Explain federalism and how it has changed over time. So federalism is the relationship between the states and the federal government and allowing them to have power and authority in their specific areas. That whatever was outlined in the Constitution was given to the federal government. Whatever was not given was given to the states. So how does this change over time? We got three main modes of federalism. So a student asked me, wait a second, Mr. Britt, isn't dual federalism the same thing as federalism? Great question, student. Well, federalism is the label that we put over all types of federalism. Under that umbrella, we get the three types of federalism. We get dual federalism, which is like federalism as it intended to operate. And we see it as a layer cake. The federalist government stays in its lane, stays within its authorities, doesn't try to interfere with the states. The states stay within their authority and doesn't try to interfere with anything, and the same thing with the local. We see it as a layer cake. We see that it is clear lines. Everyone respects those lines. It changes. That over time, the federal government and the state governments begin to work with each other. They begin to still respect those lines very clearly. But they change things to be able to work together. And so we start getting a marble cake. That's the kind of cake that it should. By the way, you'll never see a question or anything on the AP exam about cakes. So if you get a question that asks you to explain federal, do not mention cakes. Please don't. You need to explain them very academically, very AP, okay? This is just one silly way of demonstrating this. And so we get cooperative federalism, that the states and the federal government work with each other and they start going into each other's territory, but they're still maintaining the lines. They're still well within the boundaries of the Constitution. And then the last one, fiscal federalism, and that is the federalism that we live under today. It is changed by FDR during the 1930s, that now we get the federal government telling the states, hey, if you want me to help in certain areas, you need to change your laws in order to make that happen. So how do they make it happen? Grants. They make it happen with grants. And that leads us to our next question here. What are categorical grants and what are block grants? Explain which federalist system this falls under and the mandates. Ooh, the mandates. And so we get, this is obviously fiscal federalism. Fiscal federalism uses different grants. We get categorical, which are the grants that have strings attached. They have mandates. In order for you to get this grant, you have to do this. You have to abide by our rules. If you don't want to, you don't get the money. You don't have to. We're not telling you what to do. We're just saying if you want this money, go ahead and change your laws under the drinking age. Change your laws concerning X, Y, and Z. Change your laws in this way and we'll give you money. And of course, no state is going to say no to money. And then we get block grants. Block grants are essentially just free grants for every state. Every state qualifies for this. There's no qualification. Everybody gets it, and it's different for each state. How they calculate that, I can't tell y'all. I don't know. They calculate it differently for each state according to, I guess, the needs and budget that they require. And so there you go. The mandate blues. Remember this. The states love federal money. They do not like federal authority. They want the money. They do not want the regulation. There are two different kinds of mandates, funded mandates and unfunded mandates. A funded mandate means that you get money to make it happen. That is what a funded mandate is. You get money to make the mandate happen. An unfunded mandate, the one that everybody hates, is that, hey, the federal government is telling you to do this and we are not giving you any money. So the Americans Disability Act is an excellent example of this. All right, understand the 10th Amendment and explain. Think about this one. You need to know what the federal government can and cannot do under the Constitution. All right, so remember that with the 10th Amendment, anything that is not stated in the Constitution or forbidden by state law is the state's reserved rights. It's their reserved powers. They get to do it. The federal government cannot tell them what to do. And so as a result, we have different education systems. We have different ways of doing elections. We have different drinking ages. We have different speed limits. We have different health care insurance. Everyone is different because the Constitution doesn't say. And so that is a consequence of the 10th Amendment, a consequence of federalism. So keep that in mind. If it's not in the Constitution, it belongs to the states. That is the big thing. And really think about all of that stuff. All right, explain the impeachment process. What does the House of Representatives and the Senate do in the impeachment process? So here you go. It is a two-step process, okay? 3 presidents have been impeached, okay? We got 3 presidents. Well, actually, yes, 3 presidents who've been impeached, excuse me. Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump. So what does that mean? Impeach means to formally accuse. That is what impeachment means. To formally accuse of what the Constitution says, high crimes and misdemeanors. What does that mean? Whatever Congress says. That really is it, y'all. What is high crimes and misdemeanors? It's whatever Congress says. And so impeachment means to formally accuse. The House of Representatives in the impeachment process accuses the federal officer. We're going to say the president for just simplifying things. They get to accuse the president of high crimes and misdemeanors. So the House of Representatives gathers the evidence. They gather the evidence through interviews, through subpoenas, through warrants to get the evidence to accuse the president of wrongdoing. Okay? Once they get that, once they believe that they have enough evidence, they give it to the Senate. And the Senate becomes a court. The Senate is where they determine the guilt or innocence of the president. That is what the Senate does. So what actually happens is that the senators come together and they vote guilty or not guilty. The head of the Supreme Court, so the Supreme Court justice, the elder of the bunch, in this case, this would be Roberts. He's the Chief Justice. Excuse me, that's the term I'm looking for. The Chief Justice comes in, and he presides over this now court case, and they deliver guilty or not guilty. Andrew Johnson missed his guilty verdict by one Republican vote. How brave that individual was to tell his own party, no, you are wrong to go after Andrew Johnson. So he escapes being totally kicked out of office. No one has been kicked out of office. If you're going, well, Richard Nixon, Mr. Britt, he was never impeached. He resigned. Don't fall for that trick. He was never impeached. He resigned to avoid impeachment. Bill Clinton got impeached by the House of Representatives that was led by the Republicans. The Democrats controlled the Senate. They're not going to vote against their guy, so Bill Clinton gets scot-free. He was never kicked out of office. He got to serve out the rest of his term. President Trump gets accused by the House of Representatives, controlled by the Democrats. They hand it over to the Republican-controlled Senate. Guess what? Not guilty. Not once, but twice. He's the only president who's been impeached twice. And now he's the president again. What a historic presidency. How funny. All right. What are concurrent and exclusive powers? So I made sure that we went back to talk about this. Concurrent powers are powers shared between the federal and state governments. That if these are powers that they both have. So taxation is one, enforcing and passing laws is another one, and then creating social order, being able to also have welfare programs. These are all concurrent powers. It's all listed in the PowerPoint. And I'll double check that that's actually in there because I had to add that. Okay, exclusive powers. It's pretty much self-explanatory. If it's stated in the Constitution, it belongs only to the federal government. If it's not stated in the Constitution, it goes to the states. It becomes exclusive to the federal government. The federal government can only coin money. They can only declare war. They can only do international relations. The states cannot. Conversely, the states can run education. The states can run elections. The states can set speed limits. The states can do this. The states can do X, Y, and Z. All right, explain McCulloch v. Maryland. So McCulloch v. Maryland is the landmark Supreme Court case that allows the Congress to have implied powers. It is what allows them to be able to have powers that are built off of enumerated powers, okay? And so we get implied powers, we get enumerated powers with McCulloch v. Maryland. That the enumerated power, it's stated clearly, is the Commerce Clause. Congress has the authority to establish a bank, okay? The Commerce Clause, let me back up, I'm sorry, y'all. The Commerce Clause states that Congress can regulate trade. Therefore, since banks are part of the economy, part of trade, the Congress is allowed to establish a national bank. And with the Supremacy Clause, Maryland is not allowed to tax it. It is now unconstitutional. There you go. Make sure to look at your packs. Make sure you look at your packets. Explain pluralism, elitism, and hyperpluralism. What is the differences? Here you go. Pluralist theory believes that multiple voices can come together to create policies for the general good of American people. That is what pluralists believe. Elitism, and a lot of students get this wrong. Elitism is the idea that there is a small amount of people in power that they're able to do whatever they want regardless of what the law says. Okay? Now, what does elitist mean? What makes you an elitist? It could be money, it can be power, it can be military, it can be influence, it can be a lot of different things, famous, etc. Now, the part that students get messed up on is that they go, oh, they get found not guilty because they're elitist. This would be like, oh, they don't get to go on a trial because they are part of the elite. They get to go around the rules. That is what the elitist theory says. Hyperpluralism is that too many voices are competing all at the same time for too many different things, and the government is unable to act. They're unable to act as a result. They are paralyzed. They are frozen. So make sure that you know the difference between pluralism, elitism, and hyperpluralism. Why did the U.S. Constitution create a federalist system for the United States? So decentralization is the name of the game for federalism. It is to decentralize power, is to decentralize policy making, is to make sure that no one government can rule everything. You guys already know this if we covered this already with the federalist slides. I think two classes didn't. That there are over 85,000 governments in the United States. Yeah. There is no way that one party will ever be able to control all of that. It's impossible. So we make it to where we have a division of government. We have a division of authority across our political institutions. All right, last one. How does the concept of Locke's consent of the government manifest in Congress? Think more than just representation. Okay, so think about how we get the consent of the governed from Locke into Congress. Okay, so it's more than just representation, meaning that when it comes to Congress, we have confirmation power in the Senate. That's another really good one, right? That the Senate gets to approve treaties, approve appointments, etc. From the president. Okay? We also get the apportionment power of the House of Representatives, meaning that it changes with the population of the people, that we get more and less representation, more and less taxation based on the size of our population and the legislative body. Okay, y'all. So that is the review. Please make sure that y'all consult your notes, consult the PowerPoints, look things up online, watch this video, obviously, and best of luck to you on the test.